Juliet Mason clutched her worn jacket closer as Chicago's merciless rain soaked through her clothes, the last bus pulling away from the stop without her. Working double shifts at the diner had left her exhausted, her paycheck barely covering her grandmother's medication and their overdue rent. The distant sound of crying made her pause, her instincts suddenly alert despite the deserted street corner. Following the sound, she discovered a small girl huddled beneath a shop awning, designer clothes soaked through, tears streaming down her cherubic face. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Juliet knelt beside the trembling child, noticing immediately the expensive quality of her rain-drenched dress. The little girl's eyes widened with fear, backing away until her tiny shoulders hit the brick wall behind her. Juliet spotted bruises on the girl's wrists, alarm bells ringing in her mind as she scanned the empty street. Something wasn't right. Children this young and well-dressed didn't end up alone in this part of Chicago without reason. "My name's Juliet. I won't hurt you," she offered softly, extending her hand palm up like approaching a frightened animal. The girl's blue eyes studied her face with surprising intensity, as if judging her trustworthiness with wisdom beyond her years. Thunder crashed overhead, making the child whimper and instinctively reach for Juliet's outstretched hand. "I want my daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain pelting the canvas awning above them. A black sedan crawled past, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights as it slowed near them. The girl's grip tightened painfully on Juliet's fingers, her small body trembling with unmistakable terror rather than cold. Without thinking, Juliet scooped the child into her arms and ducked into the narrow alley beside the shop. The sedan's door opened slightly before closing again, its engine revving as it continued down the street with deliberate slowness. "They took me from school," the girl whispered against Juliet's neck, her small arms wrapped tightly around her savior. "Bad men said Daddy would pay lots of money to get me back." Juliet's mind raced through her limited options as she cradled the shivering child against her chest. Her apartment was 15 blocks away, but the diner where she worked was just around the corner, with its back entrance always unlocked for early deliveries. The sedan reappeared at the far end of the street, moving slowly as if searching for something, or someone. Juliet made a split-second decision that would alter the course of her life forever, pulling the child closer and whispering, "Hold on tight and stay quiet." Keeping to the shadows, Juliet moved swiftly through back alleys she knew by heart, feeling the girl's racing heartbeat against her own. Her grandmother always said kindness would be her downfall, but something about this child's terror left no room for hesitation. A diamond bracelet glinted on the girl's wrist, catching the dim light as they moved, a delicate thing with a small engraved pendant. Juliet recognized the insignia immediately, her blood running cold as realization struck her with the force of the wind now driving rain into their faces. The Buchanan family crest was infamous in Chicago, synonymous with the city's most dangerous and powerful man, Maxwell Buchanan, whose criminal empire controlled everything from the docks to City Hall. Juliet had just rescued the daughter of Chicago's most feared Mafia boss. The girl's head grew heavy against Juliet's shoulder as exhaustion overtook fear, her breathing evening out despite their hurried pace. Juliet made a decision that might cost her everything, turning away from the diner and toward her own apartment instead. The child needed warmth and safety before anything else. Juliet's tiny one-bedroom apartment offered little luxury, but its locks were sturdy and the building quiet. She gently placed the sleeping child on her threadbare couch, covering her with the only clean blanket she owned. While the girl slept, Juliet examined the bracelet more closely, finding the name Ivy delicately inscribed beside the family crest. She remembered newspaper headlines about Maxwell Buchanan's family, how fiercely he guarded his only daughter after his wife's suspicious death 3 years ago. A soft knock at her door sent ice through Juliet's veins, freezing her in place as she stared at the sleeping child. Nobody visited her at this hour. Nobody visited her at all except the landlord demanding rent. Through the peephole, she saw only an empty hallway, but the hairs on her neck stood at attention. Someone was there, watching, waiting. The same someone who had followed them through the rainy streets. Juliet moved silently to her kitchen, grabbing the only weapon she owned, a cast-iron skillet her grandmother had given her. The knocking came again, more insistent this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of her cheap lock being manipulated. Before panic could overtake her, Ivy stirred on the couch, sitting up with wide, frightened eyes. "Is it them?" she whispered, clutching the blanket to her chest like armor against an invisible enemy. "I don't know, sweetheart," Juliet replied truthfully, positioning herself between the door and the child. "But I won't let anyone hurt you, I promise." The lock clicked, and the door swung open to reveal a tall man in an expensive suit, his hand inside his jacket, in a way that suggested he wasn't reaching for his wallet. His cold eyes scanned the room before landing on the child, something like relief flickering across his otherwise impassive face. "Step away from her," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. Behind him, 2 more men filled the narrow hallway, their bulky frames blocking any escape route Juliet might have considered. Ivy leapt from the couch with a squeal that startled everyone, running straight past Juliet toward the man. "Uncle Philip!" she cried, wrapping her arms around his legs with obvious familiarity and relief. The man, Philip, placed a protective hand on the child's head, his expression softening momentarily before hardening again as he refocused on Juliet. "Who are you? And how did my niece end up here?" "She rescued me from the bad men, Uncle Philip," Ivy announced, before Juliet could form a response. "They were going to hurt me, but she carried me away and kept me safe." Philip's suspicious gaze never left Juliet's face, even as he knelt to Ivy's level. "Are you certain, Princess? Did this woman hurt you or tell you what to say?" Ivy shook her head vigorously, her small face suddenly serious beyond her years. "Juliet is nice. She has a grandma who's sick, and she works at a diner with blue booths." The precision of the child's observation startled Juliet. She hadn't mentioned her grandmother or her workplace. Ivy's uncanny perceptiveness made her seem older than her small frame suggested. "My brother will want to speak with you," Philip stated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. His men moved into the apartment, one checking rooms while the other spoke urgently into a phone. Juliet gripped her skillet tighter, summoning courage she didn't know she possessed. "I'm not going anywhere with strangers in the middle of the night, not even for Maxwell Buchanan." Philip's eyebrows rose slightly, the first hint of something other than suspicion crossing his face. "You know who she is? Yet you brought her here instead of demanding ransom. Interesting choice." Before Juliet could respond, the building's lights flickered and died, plunging the apartment into darkness broken only by the city glow through rain-streaked windows. The men instantly surrounded Ivy, weapons appearing in their hands as if conjured from thin air. "They found us!" Philip hissed, pulling Ivy behind him as his men moved to defensive positions. The sudden transformation from intimidators to protectors left Juliet momentarily stunned. A bullet shattered the window, sending glass cascading across her worn carpet like diamonds. Juliet dropped to her knees, crawling toward Ivy, who had been pushed into the kitchen corner. "Fire escape," she whispered to Philip, who nodded tersely as his men returned fire toward the building across the street. The practiced precision of their movements spoke of military training far beyond ordinary bodyguards. Juliet grabbed her grandmother's medication from the bathroom cabinet before joining Ivy in the kitchen, knowing she might never return to this apartment. 7 years of her life reduced to a single bottle of pills and the clothes on her back. With Philip covering their retreat, Juliet led Ivy down the rickety fire escape, each rusty creak setting her teeth on edge. The little girl moved with surprising stealth, following instructions without question. Clearly not the first time she'd escaped danger. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a heavy mist that clung to their skin as they reached the alley below. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows idled at the curb, its driver watching their descent with calm assessment. "Get in," Philip ordered as he joined them, his suit somehow still immaculate despite their chaotic escape. His men appeared moments later, moving backward down the fire escape with weapons still trained on unknown assailants. Juliet hesitated, her instincts screaming that entering the vehicle would irrevocably change her life. But Ivy's small hand slipped into hers, tugging gently with implicit trust that made her decision for her. The vehicle's interior smelled of expensive leather and subtle cologne, its smooth acceleration taking them away from the only home Juliet had known since her parents' death. Ivy leaned against her, small fingers still intertwined with Juliet's as though she were a lifeline. "My father is very powerful," Ivy whispered, her breath warm against Juliet's arm. "He will keep you safe now, just like you kept me safe." The SUV convoy wound through Chicago's exclusive Gold Coast neighborhood, finally stopping before a towering mansion protected by an ornate iron gate and armed guards. Security cameras tracked their movement as the gates parted silently, admitting them to a world Juliet had only glimpsed in magazines. Ivy perked up immediately, her previous fatigue vanishing at the sight of home. "Daddy will be in his office," she informed Juliet with the certainty of routine, her small hand still firmly gripping Juliet's as they exited the vehicle. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers as they entered, household staff appearing, then disappearing like ghosts, efficient and silent. Juliet felt painfully out of place in her rain-stained waitress uniform, acutely aware of the mud her cheap shoes tracked across pristine floors. Philip led them through the mansion's labyrinth of hallways, Ivy skipping beside Juliet with newfound energy. The journey ended at an imposing oak door, where Philip knocked once before entering without waiting for response. The man behind the massive desk rose immediately, his presence filling the room despite his average height. Maxwell Buchanan's reputation for ruthlessness was written in the hard lines of his face, yet when his eyes fell on his daughter, they softened with unmistakable love. "Princess," he breathed, crossing the room in 4 strides and sweeping Ivy into his arms. For a moment, he was simply a father reunited with his child, the dangerous Mafia boss temporarily eclipsed by parental relief. The transformation didn't last long, his piercing gaze shifting to Juliet with calculated assessment. "You're the waitress from that diner on 35th, he stated, rather than asked, his tone revealing an unsettling knowledge of her existence before tonight's events. "You've been watching me?" Juliet asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Exhaustion and adrenaline had stripped away her usual caution, leaving only raw honesty in its place. Maxwell's expression remained unreadable as he set Ivy down, instructing her to find Mrs. Bennet for a bath and bed. The child hesitated, looking back at Juliet with unexpected concern before reluctantly obeying her father's gentle directive. "I watch everyone in my territory, especially those who repeatedly decline Philip's offers to work in my establishments," Maxwell replied once Ivy had gone, his casual tone belying the intensity of his scrutiny. "Loyalty is rare, Miss Mason, particularly when accompanied by integrity." Juliet tensed, realizing the brothers had known her identity all along. "I didn't know she was your daughter when I helped her, and I wouldn't have asked for money regardless," she replied, lifting her chin despite her exhaustion. Something resembling respect flickered across Maxwell's face as he circled his desk, studying her as one might examine an unexpected puzzle. "The Cardelli family has been trying to get to me through Ivy for years," he explained. "But tonight they nearly succeeded. Your daughter mentioned bad men taking her from school," Juliet offered, watching his expression darken with cold fury that made her instinctively step backward. This was the Maxwell Buchanan from newspaper headlines, the man whose enemies disappeared without trace. For the first time, Juliet noticed the wall of security monitors behind his desk, displaying feeds from across Chicago, including one showing her apartment building, now surrounded by police. Her life as she knew it had ended the moment she'd lifted Ivy into her arms. "You have a choice now, Miss Mason," Maxwell stated, his voice deceptively gentle. "You've seen my face, my home, my daughter, information my enemies would kill for. What do you imagine happens next?" Juliet swallowed hard, acutely aware that her next words might determine whether she left this mansion alive. "I imagine you either trust me or eliminate me," she answered honestly, too tired for games. "But your daughter trusts me, and that should count for something." Maxwell's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile but something approaching approval. "Honesty. Refreshing," he commented, pressing a button that summoned Philip back into the room. "The Cardellis had inside help," Philip reported without preamble, placing a tablet before his brother. "Someone on our payroll provided Ivy's schedule and security rotation." Maxwell's expression hardened as he reviewed the information, his controlled facade cracking slightly to reveal the rage beneath. "Find them," he commanded, the 2 simple words carrying the weight of an execution order. Philip nodded once before turning his attention to Juliet. "Your apartment's been compromised. The police found 2 bodies in the building across the street, professional hitmen with Cardelli connections." The casual mention of death made Juliet's stomach turn, reality crashing down on her with devastating clarity. Her quiet life, serving coffee and saving tips for her grandmother's care, had vanished, replaced by a dangerous world where people killed and died over family loyalties. "Your grandmother is being moved to a private care facility as we speak," Maxwell informed her, anticipating her concern. "Mrs. Bennet will show you to a guest room while we determine our next steps." Before Juliet could process this development, a commotion erupted in the hallway, urgent voices and hurried footsteps approaching. The door burst open to reveal a security guard with blood staining his shirt sleeve, his expression grave as he whispered something to Philip. "Hospital," Maxwell ordered immediately, moving with unexpected speed as alarms began blaring throughout the mansion. "Ivy's having an allergic reaction. Someone gave her something containing peanuts." Terror gripped Juliet's heart, as she followed the men through the mansion's suddenly chaotic halls. "She mentioned a peanut allergy when I found her," she called out, running to keep pace with their longer strides. She was very specific about it. Within minutes, they were in the SUV again, racing through Chicago's streets with emergency lights flashing from behind sleek grills. Maxwell cradled Ivy's now unconscious form, her small face swollen and lips tinged blue despite the epinephrine already administered. The private hospital wing was prepared for their arrival, medical staff rushing forward to take the child from her father's arms. Maxwell stood frozen, watching helplessly as doctors surrounded his daughter, the powerful crime lord suddenly powerless. Juliet remained in the waiting area, uncertain of her place in this unfolding drama, yet unable to leave without knowing Ivy would recover. The night's events had forged an unexpected connection between them, a responsibility she hadn't sought but couldn't abandon. Hours passed in tense silence before a doctor emerged with cautiously optimistic news. Ivy was stabilized and responding to treatment. The deliberate introduction of peanut oil into her evening snack by someone in the household confirmed Maxwell's suspicions of betrayal from within his organization. As dawn broke over Chicago, casting long shadows through the hospital windows, Juliet found herself making an impulsive offer. "I'm trained in basic nursing care from looking after my grandmother. Let me help watch over Ivy. No one would suspect a waitress of being her protector." Maxwell studied Juliet with renewed interest, calculating risks against potential advantages. "You understand what you're offering? The Cardellis won't stop coming for her, and now you'd be in their crosshairs too." "I already am," Juliet replied simply, surprising herself with her lack of fear. "They saw me with her last night, and my apartment is compromised. My old life ended the moment I picked her up." A week later, Juliet settled into the mansion's east wing as Ivy's new nanny and unofficial bodyguard, her previous existence replaced by luxury she could barely comprehend. Her grandmother received specialized care in a facility that cost more per day than Juliet had earned in a month. Despite the opulence surrounding her, Juliet maintained her simple habits, rising early, dressing modestly, and focusing on Ivy's care with the same dedication she'd shown her diner customers. The household staff regarded her with curiosity that gradually shifted to grudging respect. Ivy flourished under Juliet's attention, her natural intelligence sharpening as they established routines of study, play, and careful exploration of the mansion's enormous grounds. The child's previous tutors had quit after the kidnapping attempt, leaving her education in Juliet's capable hands. Maxwell observed their developing bond with guarded approval, occasionally joining them for evening meals, where Juliet caught glimpses of the man behind the ruthless reputation. His obvious devotion to his daughter revealed depths the newspapers never captured. "Why didn't you run when you had the chance?" he asked her one evening, as they watched Ivy playing piano in the mansion's music room. "Most people would have disappeared with the cash from my wallet the moment I turned my back." Juliet considered the question, her eyes never leaving Ivy's small form. "Some choices define us, Mr. Buchanan," she answered finally, feeling his intense gaze on her profile. "I couldn't abandon her then, and I can't now." The security breach during Ivy's hospital stay had prompted Maxwell to reduce his household staff dramatically, limiting potential threats, but also increasing Juliet's responsibilities. She now attended most family meetings, her observations of people's behaviors proving unexpectedly valuable. Philip remained skeptical of her motives, watching her interactions with his niece for any sign of deception. "Everyone wants something from this family," he reminded his brother repeatedly, uncomfortable with an outsider gaining such intimate access to their inner circle. As autumn turned to winter, Chicago's first snow blanketed the mansion grounds in pristine white that Ivy viewed with childlike wonder. Juliet taught her to build snowmen and make snow angels, activities the overprotected child had never experienced despite her family's wealth. Maxwell found them there, cheeks flushed from cold and laughter, looking carefree in ways he hadn't witnessed since before his wife's death. Something shifted in his perception of Juliet that afternoon. She'd given Ivy normalcy amid the abnormal circumstances of their lives. The Cardelli threat remained ever-present, forcing Maxwell to conduct business from the mansion, rather than his usual downtown offices. Juliet became accustomed to the sound of heated discussions behind closed doors, the arrival and departure of men whose demeanors spoke of dangerous capabilities. Their unusual arrangement developed its own rhythm, with Maxwell sometimes joining Juliet for late-night tea after Ivy was asleep. These moments revealed a thoughtful, educated man whose circumstances had forced him down dark paths. a complexity Juliet hadn't expected but found herself increasingly drawn to. "You've changed things here," he acknowledged during one such evening, winter wind howling outside the mansion's thick walls. "Ivy smiles now, genuinely smiles. I'd forgotten what that looked like." Juliet woke to the mansion's alarm system blaring at 3 a.m., immediately reaching for the panic button Maxwell had installed beside her bed. She'd barely pressed it when her bedroom door burst open, revealing Philip with a gun drawn, an urgency etched into his usually composed features. The practice drills they'd run monthly for this exact scenario kicked in immediately. "Get to the safe room with Ivy now," he commanded, already moving toward the child's connecting bedroom. The mansion's security system had detected multiple intruders breaching the perimeter, triggering protocols designed to protect Maxwell's most precious asset, his daughter. Juliet grabbed the go-bag stashed under her bed, heart pounding against her ribs. Ivy was already awake, sitting upright with the special stuffed bear Juliet had given her clutched to her chest. The child's calm in the face of danger spoke volumes about her upbringing. She'd been prepared for emergencies since before she could walk. Her small fingers worked methodically to tie her shoelaces, a skill Juliet had taught her just weeks prior. Gunfire echoed from the mansion's west wing as Philip led them through a hidden passage behind Ivy's closet. The reinforced corridor stretched beneath the house, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows as they moved swiftly toward the underground safe room. The sounds of combat grew fainter with each hurried step, distance providing the illusion of safety. "What about your father?" Juliet whispered to Ivy, noting the child's frequent backward glances. Despite her outward composure, worry for Maxwell was evident in her wide eyes and trembling lower lip. The bond between father and daughter had only strengthened during Juliet's time with them, making their separation during danger all the more distressing. "Daddy has his own escape route," Ivy replied with the confidence of absolute faith. "He'll meet us at the safe place or send Mr. Reeves to get us. He promised he would never leave me alone again after Mommy died." The child's matter-of-fact acceptance of their dangerous reality never ceased to amaze Juliet, who still struggled with the violence that punctuated their lives. Philip's sudden halt sent Juliet crashing into his back, his raised hand signaling silence as he listened intently. The distant sound of footsteps in a corridor that should have been empty confirmed his suspicions. Someone had accessed the security codes for the emergency tunnels. His expression darkened with the realization that the breach was far more serious than a standard Cardelli attack. "Change of plans," he muttered, guiding them into a maintenance alcove before retrieving a satellite phone from his jacket. His hushed conversation revealed that Maxwell was already at the secondary location, having been the primary target of the attack. The coordinates had changed, the standard protocols abandoned in favor of contingencies known only to the innermost circle. A maintenance door nearby offered their best escape route, leading to the mansion's underground garage where armored vehicles waited. Philip checked his weapon before addressing Juliet with unexpected directness. "Can you drive if something happens to me?" The gravity in his voice betrayed concerns he wouldn't verbalize in front of his niece. This attack was different from previous attempts. The question chilled her, but Juliet nodded firmly. Accepting the keys, he pressed into her palm. "Head north on Lakeshore Drive, then take the third exit. The GPS is programmed with coordinates," he instructed, his tone leaving no room for questions. He removed his suit jacket, revealing a shoulder holster that contained a second weapon, which he hesitated before offering to her. Ivy slipped her small hand into Juliet's, a gesture that had become their silent communication of trust. "Like our practice drills," the child whispered encouragingly, her resilience remarkable for someone so young. In moments of crisis, Ivy's resemblance to her father became most apparent. The same steadiness under pressure, the same ability to compartmentalize fear. The maintenance door creaked slightly as Philip pushed it open, revealing the cavernous garage beyond. 3 vehicles waited in strategic positions, their engines modified for both speed and protection according to Maxwell's exacting standards. The nearest, a matte black SUV with reinforced panels, was their target, its proximity to the exit door providing the fastest escape route. Halfway to the nearest SUV, a shot rang out, the bullet striking Philip in his left shoulder with enough force to spin him sideways. He returned fire immediately, pushing Juliet and Ivy behind a concrete pillar as he took cover behind a nearby vehicle. Blood soaked through his white shirt, the crimson stain expanding with alarming speed as he continued firing toward the garage's far entrance. "Go!" he shouted, continuing to exchange gunfire with unseen assailants. "I'll hold them here. Get her to Maxwell." His devotion to his brother's family overrode any concern for his own safety, his injured arm hanging useless at his side, while he maintained suppressive fire with his dominant hand. Bullets pinged against concrete as she slid beside him, quickly assessing his injury with her nurse's training. "You can't cover us if you bleed out," she stated matter-of-factly, tearing strips from her nightgown to create a makeshift pressure bandage. The wound was serious, but not immediately fatal. If she could stabilize him long enough to reach medical assistance, his chances of survival were good. Philip stared at her with newfound respect as she worked efficiently, stemming the blood flow while maintaining awareness of their surroundings. "You're either incredibly brave or spectacularly foolish," he commented, wincing as she tightened the bandage. The color had drained from his face, shock beginning to set in despite his efforts to remain alert. "Probably both," Juliet admitted, checking that Ivy remained safely hidden. "Can you still shoot with your right arm? I need covering fire to get Ivy to the vehicle." The shooters had momentarily ceased firing, likely repositioning for a better angle of attack. Their window of opportunity would be measured in seconds rather than minutes. With Philip providing suppressive fire, Juliet retrieved Ivy and managed to reach the armored SUV, the child staying remarkably silent despite the chaos. She helped Philip into the back seat before taking the driver's position, hands steady on the wheel despite her racing heart. The vehicle responded instantly to her touch, its powerful engine roaring to life with a reassuring rumble of contained power. The garage door opened automatically as they approached, sensors recognizing the vehicle's transponder. Juliet accelerated onto the private drive, glimpsing flames now engulfing the mansion's east wing in her rearview mirror, her home for the past 3 months reduced to ash and smoke. Behind them, additional explosions illuminated the night sky, the Buchanan estate becoming a funeral pyre for whoever remained inside. Maxwell's relief at their arrival was evident in his immediate embrace of Ivy, his usual stoic demeanor cracking at the sight of his daughter safe and unharmed. The remote lake house serving as their safe haven was modest compared to the mansion, but no less secure. Sophisticated surveillance systems monitored the perimeter, while armed guards patrolled at regular intervals throughout the property's extensive grounds. "You saved my brother," he stated later that night, finding Juliet alone on the lakeside deck. His proximity sent an unexpected warmth through her despite the winter chill, his gratitude evident in the intensity of his gaze. For once, he wasn't the untouchable crime boss, but simply a man acknowledging a debt that transcended his usual business transactions. Dawn revealed the extent of their situation. The mansion attack had been coordinated with strikes against several Buchanan businesses across Chicago. The betrayal ran deeper than initially suspected, implicating longtime associates within Maxwell's organization. Financial records displayed on multiple screens showed systematic embezzlement dating back 18 months, providing motive beyond the Cardelli vendetta. The Cardellis alone couldn't have orchestrated this, Philip observed during their strategy meeting, his injured arm now properly bandaged. Someone with intimate knowledge of our security protocols gave them access. The timing of the attacks, the disabling of specific alarm zones, this was an inside job coordinated at the highest level. Maxwell's face remained impassive, but Juliet had learned to read the subtle indicators of his fury, the tightened jaw, the stillness that preceded decisive action. "We've narrowed it down to 3 possibilities," he replied, sliding photographs across the table. Each face represented years of trusted service to the Buchanan family, making their potential betrayal all the more devastating. Juliet recognized one face immediately, Mrs. Bennett, the housekeeper who had been with the Buchanan family for 15 years, the woman who had access to every room, every schedule, and most importantly, to Ivy's food before her allergic reaction. The grandmother-like figure who had shown Juliet the family photograph albums, sharing stories of Ivy's first steps and Maxwell's rare moments of unguarded joy. "It can't be her," Juliet protested, remembering how the older woman had shown her Ivy's favorite books and toys upon her arrival. What possible motive would she have after so many years of loyalty? "She speaks of your family with nothing but affection, even keeps pictures of Ivy on her personal nightstand." Maxwell's expression darkened as he passed her a folder containing bank statements and photographs. "Her son has a gambling problem and owes the Cardellis nearly $1 million. They offered to clear his debt in exchange for access to Ivy. The transfers began the day before Ivy's kidnapping attempt, with larger payments following her allergic reaction at the hospital. The realization that someone would endanger a child to save their own family struck Juliet deeply, moral complexities she had never considered before entering this world. In the Buchanan universe, loyalty and betrayal carried consequences beyond anything in her previous existence. The clear boundaries between right and wrong had blurred, leaving her adrift in ethical gray areas that offered no simple answers. "What happens now?" she asked quietly, painfully aware of how completely her fate had become intertwined with this family. The diner waitress, who had once worried about making rent, now sat at a table where decisions of life and death were made with the same casualness as business transactions, her former existence as distant as another lifetime. Maxwell studied her for a long moment before answering, his calculating gaze softening almost imperceptibly. "Now you have another choice to make, Juliet. You've proven your loyalty beyond any reasonable expectation, risking your life for my family when you could have walked away. Few people in my world act without expectation of personal gain." Philip cleared his throat, drawing their attention to the surveillance feeds showing Ivy playing chess with one of the security team. "My brother's offering you a permanent position within our organization. Legitimate business operations, of course. Your financial acumen hasn't gone unnoticed. Your ability to manage the household accounts exceeded our expectations." "You want me to work for you?" she clarified, uncertain whether the offer represented opportunity or a gilded cage. The boundaries of her role had evolved organically from nanny to something more complex. Confidant, advisor, protector, each transition occurring so naturally, she'd barely noticed the accumulating responsibilities. Maxwell leaned forward, his intense focus making the world beyond their conversation fade to insignificance. "I want you to work with me, Juliet. You see things others miss, question what most accept without thought. And, most importantly, you genuinely care for Ivy beyond any financial incentive. Those qualities are rare in my world, and invaluable to my family's future." The offer represented everything Juliet had ever wanted: financial security, meaningful work, purpose beyond daily survival, yet came from a source she would have once avoided at all costs. The moral compromise weighed against her grandmother's improved care, Ivy's clear attachment to her presence, and the undeniable connection forming between herself and Maxwell Buchanan. "I need time to think," she requested, unprepared for the life-altering decision thrust upon her. 3 months ago, she'd been a waitress with simple dreams. Now she contemplated joining Chicago's most powerful criminal family in their legitimate business ventures. Knowing the thin line separating legal from illegal operations often blurred under financial necessity. 3 weeks later, Juliet sat in Maxwell's downtown office reviewing quarterly reports from his legitimate business holdings. Her natural talent for numbers had translated seamlessly into corporate finance, her suggestions for operational improvements earning reluctant respect from longtime employees initially resentful of her rapid ascension within the organization. "The restaurant chain is underperforming because the managers are skimming from daily receipts," she explained, highlighting discrepancies in the financial statements spread across Maxwell's desk. "They've created a pattern of reported food waste that doesn't match actual inventory usage. Small amounts daily, but it accumulates to significant losses monthly." Maxwell nodded thoughtfully, making notes in his precise handwriting. "You've accomplished in 3 weeks what my financial team couldn't identify in 6 months. Your perspective as a former service worker provides insights they lack, seeing patterns from both sides of the operation." "Mum." His appreciation went beyond professional admiration, his gaze lingering on her face with increasing frequency during their daily meetings. The lake house had become their permanent residence after the mansion's destruction, its relative seclusion providing security while reconstruction began on the family estate. Ivy thrived in the natural setting, her education continuing under Juliet's guidance, supplemented by specialized tutors brought in for advanced subjects beyond her knowledge. "I never expected this life," Juliet confessed one evening as she and Maxwell walked along the frozen lakeshore. Snow crunched beneath their boots, their breath forming clouds in the winter air as security details maintained discreet distance. 6 months ago, I was serving coffee and worrying about rent. Now I'm restructuring corporate holdings worth millions." Maxwell's hand found hers, the gesture so natural it seemed an extension of their conversation, rather than the significant boundary it crossed. Life rarely follows expected paths for anyone, especially those with the courage to make difficult choices. You chose to help a frightened child without considering consequences. That decision revealed your true character. Their relationship had evolved beyond employer and employee, beyond protector and charge, into something neither could easily define. Professional conversations extended into personal territories. Shared meals became opportunities for deeper connection, and the space between them gradually diminished with each passing day. "The Cardelli situation has been resolved," Maxwell informed her one morning over breakfast, his tone deliberately casual despite the weight of his words. "Mrs." Bennett's cooperation proved invaluable in identifying their operation's key players. Chicago will be experiencing a significant reduction in organized crime this quarter. Juliet understood the unspoken reality behind his statement. The bloody elimination of a rival family, conducted with the same methodical efficiency he applied to business acquisitions. She had learned not to ask for details, compartmentalizing her knowledge of Maxwell's darker activities, while focusing on her role within his legitimate enterprises. "Does it bother you?" he asked unexpectedly, studying her reaction with unusual vulnerability. "Knowing what I am, what I've done, does it keep you awake at night? Most people would run from the reality of my world, yet you've stepped deeper into it with each passing month." The question deserved honest consideration, forcing Juliet to examine contradictions she'd previously avoided. "I've seen both sides of you now. The ruthless businessman, the devoted father, the man who donates millions to children's hospitals while eliminating those who threaten his family. You're neither the monster from newspaper headlines, nor the Saint Ivy believes you to be. My brother's different since you arrived," he commented during one such meeting, observing Maxwell's interaction with Ivy across the room. "Less rigid, more patient, almost like before Catherine died. Ivy needed a mother figure, but I didn't expect Maxwell to need someone too." The implications of his statement lingered in Juliet's mind as spring slowly transformed the lakeside property. Ice retreated from the shoreline, revealing new growth beneath winter's harsh blanket. A metaphor for her own transformation from struggling waitress to confident business advisor, whose opinions shape decisions affecting hundreds of employees across multiple companies. "Your grandmother's doctors report significant improvement," Maxwell mentioned casually one evening, sliding medical records across his desk. "The experimental treatment we arranged has reversed some cognitive decline, though the physical limitations remain. She's asking to see you. Seems my weekly updates about your new position aren't sufficient reassurance of your well-being." Emotions welled within Juliet at the news, gratitude for her grandmother's improvement colliding with guilt over her extended absence. "You've been visiting her? Personally?" The image of Chicago's most feared mafia boss sitting beside her grandmother's wheelchair seemed surreal, worlds colliding in ways she could never have imagined. Maxwell's expression softened with rare humor. "Every Thursday afternoon, she beats me at chess regularly and criticizes my taste in ties. Remarkable woman, with insights into human nature that explain much about her granddaughter's perceptiveness. She's quite convinced I have dishonorable intentions toward you, despite my assurances of professional boundaries." The conversation marked a turning point in their carefully maintained distance, acknowledging unspoken feelings that had developed between them. That night, standing on the lake house balcony under a canopy of stars, Maxwell finally voiced what had remained unspoken for months. "I've built an empire through calculated risks and strategic planning, yet finding you was pure chance, a waitress with the courage to save a child without thought of reward or consequence. You've become essential to this family, to Ivy's happiness, to my own well-being in ways I never anticipated nor planned for." His hand cupped her cheek with surprising gentleness, the hardened crime boss momentarily replaced by simply a man expressing genuine emotion. "I can offer you a life of security, privilege, and purpose, but it comes with complications few would willingly accept. My world isn't without danger, my past not without regret, my future guaranteed only by constant vigilance." Juliet covered his hand with her own, acknowledging the choice before her with clear-eyed understanding, rather than romantic delusion. "I knew who you were the moment I recognized Ivy's bracelet that rainy night. I've seen both the darkness and light within your world, made peace with complexities I once would have judged from safe distance." Their first kiss bridged remaining distance between separate worlds, the waitress who had struggled for survival, and the powerful man whose empire spanned Chicago's skyline. Two lives intersecting through chance, circumstance, and ultimately choice, creating something neither had sought but both now recognized as irreplaceable. 6 months after carrying a frightened child through rainy streets, Juliet Mason stood beside Maxwell Buchanan at his rebuilt mansion's grand reopening, Ivy between them, holding both their hands as they greeted Chicago's elite, with the unified presence of a family forged through adversity rather than blood. "Your grandmother was right about my intentions," Maxwell whispered, as they watched Ivy demonstrate her piano progress to admiring guests, though perhaps not entirely dishonorable. "I was thinking more along the lines of marriage, if you're amenable to making your position within this family permanent. Thank you all for following this story. If you've enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is essential for me to continue creating content.